Now it's time for perspective on today's Live from Paris. And the French President Emmanuel Macron is acknowledging disagreements with the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah El-Sissi over human rights. But he says it will not prevent France from reaching economic and defence deals with the North African country. Now that as Egypt's President Abdel Fattah El-Sissi is in the midst of a state visit here. Whilst at home, well, Egypt sees the heaviest crackdown on dissent in modern history. Thousands of Islamists, along with pro-democracy activists, have been jailed there, really reversing freedoms that were won in the 2011 Arab Spring uprising and placing draconian rules on rights groups as well. Well, we're going to talk to Katia Roux. She's joining us from Amnesty International. Thanks very much for being with us on the programme. Is that good enough? I mean, Emmanuel Macron says he's spoken frankly to al-Sisi on human rights, despite him getting a frosty reception. Let's not forget when he raised the issue in the past. I mean, he has at least done it again.
Well, it's clearly not enough. Both President Macron and President Sisi yesterday stressed the relationship on the two countries, how close and based on an open dialogue it is. But clearly, human rights come second. First, you have the economic and strategic interests, and then you have the human rights issues. And the disagreements apparently are not important enough to review the priorities of this partnership. And this is not acceptable.
Economic issues are important as well, though, aren't they? I mean, when you talk about the economy, you're obviously talking about people's jobs here.
We have to do economic relationships in the right way. It can't be at the expense of human rights issues. That is just not possible. And of course, we know that these links will continue, but has to be transparent and has to be monitoring of the impact in terms of human rights issues.
So, I mean, do you think then that there is a time and a place to raise these issues? I mean, why could Emmanuel Macron not do the deals that he feels he needs to do, but at the same time raise these issues either at another point or behind closed doors?
Well, he has to stress this behind closed doors, but also publicly. He's been long justified also his support to President Sisi government by saying that it is a key partner in the region for the stability of the region and for the fight against terrorism. But you can't find terrorism at the expense of human rights. You can make this economic deal at the expense of human rights. So, and now President Sisi has made it crystal clear that it's using terrorism for the crackdown on civil society. So Macron has to speak out. Verbal condemnation is not enough now. We need concrete actions, starting with the release of human rights defenders such as Roux, a case that apparently they discussed yesterday.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second. I mean, it's important to mention what you also mentioned, that answer there. I mean, France viewing Egypt and its leader there vital, really, in the fight against Islamist militants in the Sinai Peninsula, in Libya as well. I mean, those kind of issues also need to be reasons, really, I suppose, why Emmanuel Macron has to get on with al-Sisi in situations like this.
Of course, we're not calling to stop the relationship with Egypt. Of course, they need to discuss this issue, the Libya issue, the terrorism issues. They are important. But again, they can't be first and then discuss human rights issue. This is simply not possible. We're not asking to end the relationship. They are saying that they are close. They are having an open dialogue based on trust. So they need to use this trust to actually address what is really important today. And what is really important today is for the past few years, the crackdown on civil society has been worsening and worsening. So this needs to be addressed now.
And you mentioned the case there of Roux. That's a Palestinian-Egyptian activist. She's a husband of a French national, Céline Lebrun. He was arrested in July of 2019, accused of acting against the state. And there have been other arrests of her group as well, haven't there?
Yes, the crackdown on civil society and more particularly on human rights defenders have been terrible for the past few years. In the case of Roux, he's been arrested in July 2019 only for his peaceful activism. And his wife, she's French, she's been illegally expulsed from Egypt to France since then. And she's been coordinating this international campaign for his release, reaching out to groups in the Arab world, in the US, in Europe. And now we know that the case is being discussed, but we're waiting to hear back from the Egyptian authorities. And the only answer that would be acceptable would be his immediate and unconditional release. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about action, is concrete measures, starting with the release of human rights defenders who's been arbitrarily detained for years now.
And has Amnesty International been able to operate or continue to operate at all in Cairo and the rest of Egypt?
Well, we don't have an office in Cairo. We work on the issues of human rights related to Egypt and the crackdown on Egyptian civil society, but we are working from the Tunis office.
So do you feel then that this whole visit of al-Sisi to Paris should not have happened at all?
We haven't asked the visit to not to happen. We ask that in the preparation of the visit and during the visit, human rights issue should be discussed, really. This visit happens in the context of unprecedented crackdown on civil society. So now we're asking for, again, concrete measures and actions and gestures from the Egyptian government. So this is also the responsibility and commitment on France. France has been saying for years now that human rights is a priority for them and that the protection of is a priority of its diplomacy. Now it's the time to prove that right.
And let's mention arms deals as well. I mean, we half mentioned it earlier on, but I mean, Egypt has purchased French-made Mistral-class helicopter carriers, 24 Rafale advanced fighter jets as well. I mean, do you think France should be selling those kind of weapons to the Egyptians?
Well, I think that France shouldn't be selling these kind of weapons if there's no transparency, no adequate monitoring of the end use of these weapons, and it's not the case now. So yes, we are also calling on the French authority to address these issues, and France has become the main provider of weapons to Egypt. So this is also something that needs to be done, and we've been reaching out to French authorities for years now. We've been releasing a report back in 2018 showing how the volume of armed deals and how the surveillance and also all the technology can be used to crack down the civil society. So now we're asking for monitoring mechanism and also more surveillance for that.
Katia, Roux, good to talk to you on the programme today. Thanks for joining us. We lost you a couple of times, but hopefully our audience managed to follow what you were saying there. That's Katia Roux from Amnesty International talking to us there.